Melanoma is the number one cancer killer of 20 to 39-year-olds. One Australian tragically dies from melanoma every 6 hours. If you'd like to raise awareness and money for melanoma, there are 17 melanoma marches being held in March across Australia. You can sign up at melanomamarch.org.au. Hi, I'm Mia Friedman, and this is No Filter. Emma Betts thought she would be the first person in her school group to get married and have kids. She was one of the first to get married, but life has turned out a little bit differently to how she expected. Emma is now 25 and she's planning her funeral. I first heard about Emma through my close friend Rebecca Sparrow, who had Emma as a babysitter a few years ago. And I remember her telling me, my babysitter Emma has just been diagnosed with melanoma and she's only got a few months to live. It's like stage 3 or stage 4. And I remember being so shocked and obviously following Emma's story. And I've followed it for 3 years. She didn't die. In fact, she started a blog called Dear Melanoma. She got on some incredible cancer drugs and she sort of lived in this very strange limbo for a few years where her death was not imminent and the treatment was working, but she was still terminally ill. A couple of weeks ago, Emma got some bad news. She was at the end of the road. There was no more treatments, no more trials. Once again, she was looking down the barrel of just having a few months to live. Except this time, according to Emma, it felt very different. This was a hard interview to record, and yet it was a really lovely one. We laughed a lot. I was conscious of wanting to protect Emma. I was worried about the toll that it might take on her physically and emotionally. She's in a lot of pain at the moment, and during the interview, the nurse actually came, the palliative care nurse came and administered some drugs to her while we were talking. Pretty good multitasking. But because we couldn't be in the same room, Emma's in Brisbane at her home and I'm in Sydney in the podcast studio, I felt like it was really important she had someone there with her. Her husband still has to work, so I made sure that Beck came over. Beck and I talked about it and she offered to come over and sit with Emma. She's been seeing quite a lot of her lately and she sat beside her and held her hand, and so I felt that she was supported. There were times in the interview when she broke down, but there were also a lot of moments of black humour and just normal girly stuff. She's 25 and she's more than just cancer. This isn't just an interview I want you to listen to. I also need to ask for your help for Emma. There is a website that her family and her friends have started called Love for Emma. If you Google my cause and Love for Emma and donate just a few dollars, maybe the cost of a cup of coffee or, $20. People don't often talk about the financial stress involved in dying, but there is a lot of financial stress. And while there's nothing that we can do to change Em's prognosis, we can make her life more comfortable. So here's my interview with Emma Betts. You are so much more than cancer, Emma Betts. You are so much more than cancer. When you first noticed the spot or the mole, you were in East Timor of all places.
Yeah.
What were you doing there?
So I'd studied international relations and peace and conflict studies at uni. My passion had always been aid and development.
Yeah.
And it was always, I worked really, really hard during uni to volunteer because I knew how difficult it was to have a career in aid and development. So I volunteered for an organisation called Oak Tree, which is a youth-run aid and development organisation, and did really well in that. And when I was in my final year with them, I spent a month in East Timor with some of the other volunteers and absolutely fell in love with this country. I knew that that's where I wanted to go back to, so I had 6 months left of uni and I put my feelers out there and I said, I'll volunteer 3 months at this rehab centre for people with physical disabilities. My background was obviously not in disabilities, but that's where my passion kind of lay there. So my job was to teach the clinicians and the staff at this rehab centre how to do monitoring and evaluation and how to actually say, yes, our work is good.
So you're a very good person. You still are a very good person, I assume.
It's always been something that...
Well, most people go overseas and backpack and go to Oktoberfest in Germany and drink beer, don't they?
No, that was never me.
So how did you discover the mole, the melanoma?
So on weekends, for about the first 6 months of being in East Timor, I would go scuba diving. It was amazing scuba diving, and I was taking my wetsuit off, and a person that I just met through scuba diving, this guy was just there for a holiday. He's a complete stranger. He pointed out this mole, and
what did it look like?
Well, the thing is, it was on my left shoulder, and it's not like I had that many mirrors in my little house that I was living in, and you don't really look at your shoulder. And I never took a photo of it. I wish I had. That's one of my big regrets, not taking a photo of it. It kind of like, it was different to my other moles, and that was the key. I'm like, when you look up melanoma on the internet, you get the extreme cases of everything, just like any disease you type into Google. So I always, when I talk to students or just talk to anyone about melanoma, I point out that it's about being different. So I guess it was, all my moles are quite, the same shape and quite pink. This one was a bit irregular in the border of it, and it did have a tiny little dot in it, a black dot. But when I came, because I was due to come back for a holiday, so when I came back, I had it cut out. And I'd had moles cut out before, but they were all fine.
Did the doctor, when they saw it, seem particularly alarmed or concerned?
No, not at all. But it's one of those things. I was just like, just take it out because of my complexion and everything. And they took it out and removed it, and it came back that it was something similar to melanoma, but not melanoma. But we needed to treat it like melanoma. But it was stage 1. It was really, really, really thin. So the chance of that mole causing any problems in the future was a mere 5%. Like in medical terms, that's pretty much.
How big was the mole? Can you remember?
It was probably only half a centimetre. It wasn't overly big.
After you got it cut out, you went back to East Timor?
Yeah, under the proviso that I came back to Brisbane every 3 months to have a skin check. And I did. And I obviously had to be sun smart, which I already was sun smart. You can't not be with my features.
So was it from the sun?
Well, it's a difficult one. So I was never a tanner. Because I would burn if I even tried. So I've got pale skin, red hair, blue eyes. So how it works is that my risk factors increases like by double every time you add something like that in. Yeah, so my melanoma, I've always, like, you go to the melanoma clinic at the hospital, so the day where all the melanoma patients see their doctor, there's a lot of redheads.
Yeah, right.
A lot of redheads, and then you get a lot of older people that have clearly been your baby oil people. But my melanoma, there's a genetic mutation within my tumour, tumours. It's not a mutation that is something that my siblings or if I had children could be tested for. It's only within that tumour. So
it's bad luck.
Yeah, like essentially my melanoma's been bad luck.
Yeah.
There was never another mole that was bad that we missed. I was 5% of person where it's like of the people where it spread.
Did you do the Google thing when they said, look, it's a melanoma, but it's not really a melanoma, and did you sort of Google it and freak yourself out?
Not with the primary. I don't think the primary really scared me because I knew what I had to do. I knew that statistically it wasn't going to be an issue, and it was more of a chance of something popping up in the future. And I knew that if I caught it early, like I did the first one, that everything should be fine.
So you were 21 or 22 at this stage?
21. So it was I only really did the Googling when it spread.
So you went back to East Timor, agreed to come back every 3 months, went, okay, that was annoying, but moving on.
Yeah.
Then what happened after that?
So that was October, and then in August the following year I found a lump under my arm, and I always knew to do self-checks between the 3 months. So I always had to look at my skin, but as well as feel my lymph nodes, and in particular the lymph nodes under my left arm, because that would be the logical place for it to spread. And I found a lump under my arm, and I had dengue fever a few months earlier, so I just hoped that it was dengue, like the dengue fever hanging around. But I knew that I had to act on it. So I went to the embassy doctor. So I was at the stage where I was finishing up my role at the rehab centre. I only had, a few months left. So when I went to the embassy doctor, she was straight on the phone to my doctor in Brisbane, who is the expert in melanoma surgery. He's a surgeon. And so she was on the phone to him, and within a week there was biopsies booked in Brisbane. So I literally I begged for a week so that I could say goodbyes, not only at work but to friends, make sure I did the proper handover, because of course that's me. I don't just pack up my bag. And then I returned to Brisbane and had the biopsies, and whilst all this was happening, when I was home with dengue fever, I had met my now husband. My sister had set us up. He worked for my brother-in-law, and we'd been talking on Skype since I was home with the dengue in June. And it was a given that we were going to get together when I finished my contract. But obviously I was coming home early. So there's a lot of excitement about seeing him and starting this relationship, that I was probably more focused on that than going home to have biopsies to see if I had cancer. So we had met up, had dates, and he knew I was coming home, but I don't think he clicked what it could mean. So the biopsy was to find out if I had stage 3 melanoma. And for people that know about melanoma is so easy to treat when it's stage 1 and even stage 2. Once it goes to stage 3, it's taken on a new level. If you were stage 3, it was a 70% chance that it would go to stage 4 within 5 years. So stage 4 being terminal. So I was 22 now and faced with the possibility that I was diagnosed with terminal cancer within the next 5 years. So the biopsy came back positive, obviously. I had surgery to remove all the lymph nodes from under my left arm. And at that point, the treatment for a stage 3 patient was surgery and essentially monitor. You had to sit and wait and see what happened. But there was a new clinical trial that was coming out that was for people with a BRAF mutation, which is the genetic mutation I had, and half the patients would get a placebo, the other half would get this targeted therapy. So I was, of course, going to do that, even if I got the placebo. And part of, getting onto that clinical trial was that I had to prove that it hadn't spread elsewhere, and we'd already had scans to do that. But we had to do more, and unfortunately something had been missed on the first lot of scans, and it was already in my liver. So we don't technically think that I was ever stage 3. Well, I was stage 3 for probably a month, in our minds. So it quickly turned from 70% chance of being terminal to you've got terminal cancer and you're 22.
What was that conversation on that day? Was it one doctor that told you that?
Yeah, it was the surgeon. So I don't remember that conversation in the slightest. I remember just being told that I was no longer under his care. I was to go and see an oncologist. Surgery isn't really something you do for stage 4 patients. So I remember my appointment with the oncologist, and the first thing she said to me was, "Oh, you're young." And I felt like just yelling at her and going, "Yeah, I realise, like, it's unfair. I know I'm young."
Who was with you?
My mum and dad. Yeah, so in that appointment, it was pretty much straight away, "What are we doing?" I was asking questions like, "So should I freeze my eggs?" And she's like, "No, there's no point." So, like, once again, she was very blunt.
Wow.
So these are the kind, like, there's no time to muck around. Like, in the 3 years that I've had stage 4 melanoma has really changed in the treatment and the fact that people are living a lot longer than the 9 months that someone was given 5 years ago. The treatment also didn't impact my fertility, so there was logic in it.
In that first conversation, did you say, what's the prognosis? How long have I got? Did you even think about it in those terms?
I don't know if I asked the exact numbers, but that's the point where I Googled.
Oh, that must have worked out well.
Yeah, 10 to 15% of being here in 5 years, not the cancer you want. So in that appointment, I was actually put onto the treatment that I was going to be on the clinical trial for. For a stage 3 patient. So it had already been proved to this treatment to give stage 4 patients, some patients up to 18 months. So that was really exciting.
What did you do when you left that meeting with your parents? Can you remember?
This is what we do every time. I cry and then we go and eat sushi.
It's good that you've got a routine.
How pathetic is that?
No, I don't think I'd say it's pathetic.
Like, we just suck it up and go and eat sushi.
You know, I can't imagine anything worse as a parent. Did you feel like you had to manage everyone else's grief around you with this new diagnosis?
I think so, and that's an ongoing thing. I think my parents have been very good. Like, my parents have a fantastic relationship. And I'm so glad that they have that, because they have each other. But there is, like, definitely an element. And I don't know if I necessarily felt it in the early stages, but definitely, you know, when things were bad and now things are bad again, like, you want to be strong. But I've also always made sure that I've seen social workers and psychologists, and I've always wanted those people to be the people that I have the breakdown to, or people like Beck, because they're the separate people. And then I've got friends who I just want to have fun with. I don't want it to be hard and heavy conversations all the time. And I think that's the same with my family. Like, we'd all have our breakdowns in appointments, and definitely when the treatment I went on didn't work, we gave it 3 months and I had a scan, and it had gone from me and my liver to pretty much every organ in my chest and abdomen, and given 3 months to live. So we had appointments at that stage with palliative care, so this was 3 years ago, palliative care, and I literally planned my death because I was very strict in that I wanted to, be at home. I've been on my blog very vocal about end of life and, dying with dignity. So I think part of me being such a planner those 3 years ago and saying I want to be at, like, my parents' house with Serge, all these things was my way of controlling things as much as possible.
Did the people around you let you have those conversations, or were people trying to sort of go, oh, but this could happen and there's hope and there could be a miracle?
My family has been really good in that we're all on the same page. In those meetings with palliative care, that's when they had their breakdowns as well. And, also having the blog, my families haven't had a choice but to read my thoughts on it. And I think that's just one of the best things about the blog, because you don't really want to go sit down with your parents and go, this is actually what I would have hoped we could do. It's better sometimes that they read it and then you have a conversation.
Yeah. So 3 years ago, you had all these conversations. You had the meetings with the palliative care people. I remember I followed this all through Beck, who you'd been babysitting for, which is how I came to know about you. Yeah. And then you didn't die.
No, I didn't. I discharged myself from palliative care, which now that I think about it, I probably shouldn't have, because it's caused a lot of issues the last few weeks with getting back onto palliative care.
In what way? What has it caused issues?
It would have just been because everything that's happened in the last few weeks, which I guess we'll get to, has happened so quick. We've needed palliative care for home care. Pain management, just have nurses come and change the needle every day. Something that's simple, you need to have palliative care on board for. So, and it's been hard to organise that this quick. But I was given 3 months if a clinical trial that I ended up gaining access to didn't work, or if I couldn't get on it. And that was for a drug called Keytruda, which has taken the cancer world by storm. It's an immunotherapy treatment. It's pretty much the future of cancer. And I had almost 2 years of that drug working.
And so when you say it worked, you felt well?
Yeah. Well, I never felt, when the cancer had spread, I had a lot of pain just because of the positioning of the tumours. A lot of back pain because there was one particular tumour on my pancreas that was pushing into my spine. So I was on a lot of painkillers, a lot, but I never felt like my organs always continued to function. So I wasn't what you expect. I think people expect cancer patients to be so sick and ill, but what people don't realise is that's often the treatment making them sick, and the side effects of the treatment not
the actual cancer, because you've always looked very well. You've looked
only in the end that a patient is going to get sick when their organs start shutting down and not doing and their body not doing what it should do. And Keytruda was a very nice treatment when it came to side effects. Like, I got tired, my hair went white. I dye it now, but it literally went white. But other than that, I had no side effects. Other people do get side effects from that treatment, but I've been able to live a normal life. I never went back to full-time work because mentally, and also when you know you're going to die, you don't want to work, even if it's months or weeks away. And the blog kind of became a job for me.
So what a head fuck, if I can say that. Like, being told you're going to die, then being told, well, maybe you're not going to die, but you still might, but have your life, but it probably won't be long, but it could be.
And that was probably the biggest thing I struggled with emotionally, and that's when I started seeing a psychologist, because it was like I was living life in limbo. I was sick of that whole living, every day like it's your last. Oh, I hate it when people say that, because it gets really tiring.
Oh, God, yes.
Living in the moment, like Serge and I were going on, Serge and I had, fast forward, we're now married.
Yeah, so you decided to get married?
Yes, we got engaged at the end of October, so shortly after, I guess, I was terminal.
Did you keep saying to him, you know what, you can go, like, you can?
Yeah. It was a conversation in the shower, me saying, you can go, and him saying, let's get married. So that's how romantic our engagement was.
That is actually beautiful.
Our wedding was booked for May, and then we got the 3 months, so we moved it forward to March. But Serge and I were going for weekends away. We'd eat out all the time. We both put on so much weight. It was disgusting.
Spend all your money.
Living in the moment. And Serge had stopped working as well. And I got to the point where I was a bit sick of him being around all the time. Yeah. And I, as much as I hadn't started the blog yet at that point. But it was really hard. And I was doing probably 6 months into starting this treatment. So that took us to, I guess, June. Things were looking like my scan results were looking really good. The cancer wasn't disappearing.
But the tumours were shrinking.
Yeah, the pain had pretty much disappeared. We knew it was working. And I just needed to have a bit of normality back. So I started working like a day a week at a gift shop, the blog, and just Serge went back to work. And it just, I needed a bit of normal.
You guys bought a dog?
Yeah, we bought a dog. We bought like a unit the following year. Like we did some pretty big stuff.
That's a commitment.
Yeah, which is a bit of a stress now. But it was all based on, like, everything was decided on with in the back of our heads going, what happens when I'm not here? Whether it's a year down the track or 5 years down the track, or if it just doesn't happen. So we haven't been ignorant. I discharged myself from palliative care because I didn't need their help. And they were calling me monthly to check up on me, as they should. But I got sick of them calling me monthly because I didn't want to talk about cancer to another person. So I was just like, okay, I don't need your help. Discharged myself.
I'm going to live my life. With your friends, I imagine you're in your 20s. Is Serge around the same age?
Yeah, so I'm 25 and he's 27.
So marriage obviously is something that happens in your 20s, but so is pregnancy for some people. Were you finding that was happening to your friends?
The nurse has just shown up, but she knows what she's doing. I don't need to stop.
Okay. Excellent. I love a bit of multitasking.
Put it there. Yes, we're just getting some pain meds.
Do you need to stop for a bit and get your breath back or anything? No, you're okay? You wrote on Dear Melanoma about, thank God none of my friends have got pregnant. Yes. Because that would have been just too much to bear.
Yeah, I think, yes, it was, because it was always at school, it was always like I'd be the first one to get married and I'd be the first one to have children, and some of my friends have now got married, but that's all right because I'm married already. But I think it would be heartbreaking. I really struggled with my sister having her second baby, who's one now, because it was such an eye-opener watching her be pregnant and everything. Well, watching her be pregnant with both of her children, actually. And I think if my friends started having babies, I just don't know how I'd emotionally just... That was my job to have the babies first.
Yeah. And that was just it would have just been too confronting.
I think so. And like, it's not, obviously if one fell pregnant tomorrow, I'd be happy, but I'd be happy for them, but there's no, you can't hide, the emotions that come with not having children. I think Ralph, having him has made life so much easier.
Yeah, so pouring a lot of love into your fur baby.
Yes, well, he's being a little turd at the moment. But
so are kids often.
Well, that's the thing. Like, we've had Ralph 2.5 years now, and I've got 5 nieces and nephews between 1 and 6.
Ooh.
And they are the most beautiful children. Love them to death. But when you're babysitting or at their house, sometimes you just like to leave.
Oh, yes.
At the end of the day, like, you can give them away.
It's true.
And that's nice. And dogs are so easy. So I've kind of like, Serge and I often joke when we come home to Ralph and go, oh, isn't this bliss? So it's really actually...
And you can just put Ralph in the laundry if he gets too annoying. It's harder to do that with kids, although it is possible.
Like, if tomorrow the cancer disappeared, of course we'd have children. But at I think I've finally in some ways come to terms with it. As long as it's not right smack bang in front of me. Yeah, so I think it's nice having that kind of, comfort in that. Serge and I talk about him having children. And
do you think about his life after you're gone?
Yeah, and I make so many inappropriate jokes, it's not funny.
Can you tell me some of them?
Our house is pretty much like, I love photos. And it's pretty much just a shrine to me. And I tell him that I'm going to super glue all the photos to the wall so that he can't take them down. And in his head, he's like, of course I'm not going to take them down. But I'm like, no, there's going to be a point where you're going to have to share the wall space with someone else. Well, I hope. He doesn't like talking about that but he needs to. But I want him to move on. But we had the conversation the other day that I want to be spoken about with his future partner. I don't want to be. I was talking to someone who had lost their mum to melanoma and their dad, and how their dad has moved on and all that kind of stuff, and that there's been jealousy. And I'm like, how can you be jealous of someone that's dead? Like, that doesn't make sense to me. But I want them to see me as an important part. And same as when the Serge has children, I'd like to be spoken about. I don't know if people do that. Might sound a bit weird, but, it's not like Serge is going to be a widow. He's not going to be divorced. There's going to be no bitter end to a relationship. So it's very different. So he knows that that's what I want. My family knows that. So Serge knew my family, obviously, before he knew me. He knew my whole family for almost 5 years before he met me. It's crazy. And we always joke that he was actually trying to somehow move into my sister's house and become part of our family. Like, he was a bit obsessed. So he's very, 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 very close with my family. And
that's not going to change, right?
Well, it won't change, but obviously there'll be a point where he introduces someone, and that's where I hope that no one would influence that. So Serge is from a European family, and his Christmases and Easters are all on different dates to our dates, and which makes family events so easy because we don't have to argue over whose family we're going to. So it's a given that Serge is going to be in Serge's, in my mind, that he'll be at all of our Easters and, Christmases until, he has to share that with another person. So that person is going to essentially be part of my family as well. So I hope. He hopes.
For what it's worth, I've got friends who have either married widowers or have been widowed and then remarried, and with all the children and not issues, but all the, ongoing things that happen in life. And it does work like that. That person is still a part of the past, but also the present and the future. And it does work like that. It can, absolutely.
Anyway, so, yeah. So, and as long as Serge knows that that's what I want, that's the main thing. It would be, for people with cancer, at least you can prepare someone. You can tell them what you wish. If you're in an accident, you can't do that. And I think he doesn't ever have to question anything.
What would you want?
Because we've both been so open about talking about it. This is totally off topic, but another inappropriate. Last night I said to him, we always fight over closet space. And I so inappropriately said, "Oh, you're going to have so much room in this house when I'm gone." And he just looked at me and was like, "Are you kidding me?" And I was like, "Come on, darling, you just have to, just go with it."
Are people shocked when you make jokes?
Oh yeah, my family's horrified sometimes, but that's when you have to do it. Yeah. If you can't, it's kind of the way of being able to talk about it without having that serious conversation. And so we've always made jokes the whole way along.
Like black humour.
Oh yeah.
Do you ever find yourself thinking, where are all the good guys? I'm Corinne Grant, and I have some people I'd like you to meet. They've all faced unimaginable battles, and their stories will make you cry, laugh, and cry again.
Had I known about that as an athlete, who knows how much faster I could have run.
From sports heroes to transgender women.
And I've always been a fighter all my life.
Rappers to lawyers.
Don't you know what's happening? Don't you know this is being done in our name?
pacifists to activists,
You may think you own the land, but the land owns you.
and workers to the wounded.
Putting on a pair of shoes and doing the shoelaces up. I can't do that.
They're fighting for a world that gives everyone a fair go, and they are not giving up.
I've had this battle of being totally accepted for just being me.
That maybe I can choose love, that I can lead with love, that I could be love.
Fighting for fair. True stories of social justice from around Australia. Subscribe in iTunes or the Mamma Mia podcast app.
3 months ago, the treatment stopped working and that beautiful, strange limbo that you had came to an end.
Yeah, so the whole of last year we were, since the trial, the Keytruda treatment had finished, we'd pretty much been jumping from treatment to treatment because nothing was really working in that it wasn't shrinking anything. So we tried back on the first drug that was an epic fail, and that was epic fail again in that it started growing again. And then, so we stopped that quickly, and then I went back on Keytruda, and then I was able to gain access to a combination treatment, which I'm back on again now. But it's just been like lots of radiation. So it's been a year of
hospitals and drugs and pain and...
But I've been, and this is thanks to my doctor and her being so clever, that I've been able to try drugs twice, whereas normally people don't get to do things twice, and it's because she's just amazing at gaining access to trials, gaining access to drugs on compassionate access, and then on the PBS. Like, she's just always said to me, she's never been a doctor that has gone, here are all your options, because she knows that options depend on timing. So she talks about what's immediately in front of us, and I thank her for that, because if she was like some other doctors, you'd get your hopes up. So she always, so I've known that in the back of her head, she's been just ticking away, thinking about how to best do this. And she pretty much for a year had me kind of circling around this clinical trial that opened up, I don't even know when I started now, say 4 months ago, because I was on it for 3 months. And this clinical trial was a phase 1 trial. So very early stages, and very early stages in human testing, no data on it. So we're really winging it, but we knew we had to do it because it's all about having more options and more time. This drug, so there's only 30 melanoma patients in the whole world to access this, and I was one of them.
Wow.
Again, shows how amazing she is.
She's kick-ass, hey?
Yeah. And so we got on it, and it didn't work, and it didn't work quite quickly. So I had the big tumour, that's our trouble tumour, grew. It didn't grow at first, but in the second half, the second 6 weeks of the treatment, grew by like 6 centimetres, and that's a huge growth in such a short amount of time. So it's about 14 centimetres now. So that's sitting in a place called the porta hepatis, which is pretty much smack bang in the vessel that divides your liver. So not a good place, because you can't operate that close to your liver, because you'd end up with no liver. You can't even do a partial resection of your liver. So it's inoperable. And it's also, so it's pushing completely on my spine, and it's now blocking my stomach, well, like partially blocking my stomach and my liver, and it's causing a big fluid build-up. So this is the first time that I've actually had the kind of physical manifestations of cancer. Like, I've obviously lost, had the white hair and all that kind of stuff and the pain, but you've never physically looked at me and gone, oh, there's something not quite right. But I've been in hospital. I was in hospital last week, and it was for 2 weeks. I got out last week. Have been in there for 2 weeks because of the fluid build-up, and that's because of the tumour. And that's not a nice thing, because I looked like I was 9 months pregnant. Pretty much had to buy a whole new wardrobe the last week, just because I don't want to look like I'm 9 months pregnant.
Mm.
So when I was in hospital, they drained 8 litres of fluid.
Oh, gosh.
Lost 8 kilos.
Woo.
Well, obviously I gained it at the same time. But literally, 8 litres of fluid, and that's not much compared to other patients. But that had built up really quick. And
The irony of looking pregnant when you can't be must also be really painful.
And it's also, I think people would look at me and like, I'd never want someone to come over to me and go, "Oh, are you pregnant?" That's the last thing you want to answer. Luckily, I didn't have any of that because I was, I guess, in the four walls of a hospital and people kind of know. But it was hard looking at yourself going, I'm sick. And I also, through the blog, I've met other people with cancer, and there's been people that have passed away, and I've always been really careful in that not to make friends with cancer or limit that, because I don't want to watch people die. So I've always been really careful with that. But there's a few people that, get through, and in their last weeks, you see the fluid build up. And I'm like, oh my gosh, does this mean the end for me? And obviously it's close. But, it doesn't, I needed the reassurance that it wasn't weeks away. So that was really difficult because I, can associate the symptoms with people that are dying or have passed away.
You've been here before. You've been given just a few months before. Does it feel different this time?
I think it does this time, because this time I think it's those physical signs in that, I guess, the first time I had that trial ahead of me going, please, if it works, it could be really good. This time I'm at the point where, so I'm still getting active treatment, which is positive that the oncologist isn't giving up. It's not about getting a cure from that treatment or even getting, that much of an extension of life. It's more about trying to control my symptoms. So if we could have a slight reduction in the tumour, maybe the fluid won't build up as much. So I'm still in active treatment, but beyond that, there's nothing else.
You're at the end of the road in terms of treatment.
I've exhausted everything that's available on the PBS. If a clinical trial pops up, there is one that is coming up, but that's months and months away. So we're just circling that. And I have to be well enough, and at the moment I'm not well enough for a trial. I wouldn't be deemed well enough. I think the difference is this time I'm at the end of the road with treatments, whereas 3 years ago I had the clinical trial and then there was a drug that was on the PBS, but I always said that I wouldn't do that treatment because of side effects and everything, which I've now done and actually coped with it. But back then I wasn't going to do it. I guess I don't like using the word fight or battle or any of this thing, but I guess...
Tell me why not, because sometimes people...
It's the most hated words, but it's so hard to find another word.
Yeah.
You don't want to die. If someone, and this is something that I will widely communicate with my family and friends, if someone puts in my obituary or comments or whatever that I've lost my battle with cancer, I'll spew.
You're going to come and haunt those people. We better make sure we don't ever write that.
But you're not losing. You can't. Exactly. It's a sense of failure that, sometimes you just can't. I've tried my hardest.
Yeah.
And people that say, oh, as long as you keep on fighting, blah blah blah. Well, I am trying my hardest. I'm not giving up. It doesn't matter how much I fight. It's it's going to get me.
Spend a lot of time thinking about death?
No. like I think about, I definitely had fears. Early on, I was really scared about how I was going to be when I die. My big melanoma is known to go to the brain in a lot of cases, and I guess this was really where my need to write about end of life and dying with dignity laws, because I was scared that I'd end up with a brain tumour. So far, I'm fine. But that was a real possibility, and I don't want to end up spending. Well, first of all, didn't want to die in don't want to die in a hospice, but I don't want to not be cognitively with it, or if it had spread to my spine, not being able to move for long. I understand that probably in the last days or week I might need help with going to the toilet and getting around. I understand that. But I don't want to have a prolonged, drawn-out death where I can't walk or can't speak, can't communicate. That's where my biggest thoughts around death was more the fear of how I will go. And of course I still fear, but I guess the fact that at the moment it's not in my brain is a big thing.
That's a win.
But yeah, I think working out my palliative care plan the last few weeks, and what happens if I can't be at home, and I will be at the hospital where I've decided to go with private palliative care because I didn't want to be in a hospice. I've only heard wonderful things about hospices, but I didn't want to be potentially going in for pain management, coming home, going back, and then potentially not leaving. But each time going back and forth, and someone that you've met or seen walking around not be there anymore. Whereas with the plan that we have now is that I will, the oncology ward at the hospital where I've been having treatment and where I've been the last few weeks is also palliative care. So I've formed such a beautiful relationship with the nurses and all the doctors who are my ongoing doctors. I'm not scared of the place. It's a place where I've gone home from before. And if I have to pass away there, at least I'm surrounded by, obviously, my family and friends, but my nurses that have been there the whole time. So that's why, that's literally was the decision between, because I had been going with public previously, but it came back to just purely where I wanted to be where I died. When I die.
That's not a conversation or a decision or a thought process you really want to have at 25, is it, Em? Jesus, God.
So it was a really difficult few weeks in a hospital just making that decision, because you kind of want someone to
make it for you.
And it's also not a decision that you want to make the wrong decision.
Have a drink of water. I don't want you to dehydrate on my watch. It would be very bad. Okay, it's me. I'm just checking in to see how you're going. Emma is going okay, let me tell you. She's got Beck by her side, and she's got the tissues out, and she's got a bottle of water, and she's getting through it. I've asked her a few times if she wants to take a break, and she's like, no, I just want to get through. You can hear that the tumour's pressing on her lungs, I think, a little bit. She's a little bit short of breath, but what an extraordinary, effervescent personality just shining through. Please make sure you go and check out Katie Bishop's cover story that is about Emma and about other terminally ill young people and what it means to face death when you're meant to be just embarking on your life. Let's get back to Emma. In the palliative care program and the plans that you make, do they encourage you to plan your funeral?
It hasn't really been spoken about, but I've worked that out. I want to plan my funeral.
You strike me as a kind of person who really would want to plan that and be across it.
3 years ago, when we were deciding on a wedding celebrant, and Beck helped with choosing our wedding celebrant.
Yes.
Yeah, so Emily Jade O'Keefe. Who
I know Emily Jade.
Yeah. It was always the agreement when we were planning our wedding, we discussed that she'd do my funeral. So that was a conversation 3 years ago whilst planning what should, your happiest day of your life. So that was an agreement. So last week I messaged EJ and said, it's time to start planning. So it's hard, but I'm once again, all the inappropriate jokes come around my funeral. My mum had this thing like 3 years ago. There's this really nice little chapel where my family's not religious, and where my grandfather was, his funeral was. I said to Mum, I was like, you can only fit like 100 people in there. There's going to be more than 100 people at my funeral.
And we need a telecast. We need to live stream it via Facebook.
My funeral, I've got such a beautiful community on the blog.
Yeah.
I don't want, people want to come and say goodbye.
Of course.
And I'm happy for that. My wake can be for my friends and family, and my family's comfortable with the fact that I want it to be public. They can go, I want to be cremated, so they can go and do that part, go to the crematorium by themselves, just my family. But I want my funeral to be a celebration. Like, there's nothing. Having cancer and knowing I'm going to die, I have the power to tell people what I want. And
you sure do.
And through the blog, I've kind of encouraged people to talk about death, because who knows what's going to happen. And, I think too often people are in accidents and pass away, and their family is left not knowing what to do, or they do the total opposite to what that person probably, everything that they represent. I've seen that happen before. And yes, I'm in a position where I can really communicate that. And I want people to sit there and listen to lots of stories about me, look at lots of photos. I want it to be a big, fun, Daryl Braithwaite, the horses will probably feature. Well, it will. I'm not going to tell my friends and family how it's going to feature, but it will. Things like, things that, like, that's what my friends and family do at, like, one of my friends in particular, at weddings and parties. The horses comes on, and that's what we all get up and dance to. Like, it's disgusting how much, like, my friends, one of my best friends threw her undies on stage at Daryl Braithwaite about 8 years ago. So there's
a special memory.
So luckily it will probably just be on a speaker, or we'll have undies going on there. But yeah, like, I want it to be something. Yeah, I've got it sorted. And I said to EJ, I was like, it's not going to be some little thing. Like, and she's the perfect person. She's so over the top. I'm sure, I'm not talking about, like, I'm sure her funeral would be the most elaborate funeral in the world as well. Like, so she'd be on exactly the same
But
day.
she certainly embodies everything that you are in terms of just energy and passion and irreverence and joy, really.
And I think that's, obviously it's going to be sad. Of course it's going to be sad, but it doesn't all have to be sad. So, I just want, everyone to feel, my friends and family to feel that they're part of it, and they can be part of it as much as they're comfortable being part of it when it comes to talking and that kind of thing, but also for the people who follow the blog that I've never actually met that want to be there for them to feel like they know how thankful I am. I thank them all the time. But they've been so much part of this journey, if you want to call it that, as a lot of my friends and family. And there's been, I culled a lot of people when I got sick, because people show their true colours. when it comes to things like this, people just that didn't support or put out that they needed so much from me to support them through me being sick.
God. You wrote on your blog about an incident in November when someone got upset that you weren't putting enough time and energy into seeing them and said you can't use cancer as an excuse. You've been dying for 2 years.
2 years.
Yeah, you wrote about that, which was just quite gobsmacking.
I just can't believe anyone could say, and this is someone that should have known better, but to say that, because, there's times when obviously Serge and I aren't up to doing things or
funnily enough,
emotionally or physically. I don't even have to justify it.
No, you don't. Of course you don't. But it's back to that other people's reactions to what you're going through and how you've just got to stay focused on yourself. But you did talk about being a burden and not wanting to ask for help. So I'm not going to make you ask. I'm just going to ask you. You tell me what you need. Do you need money? Do you need food? Do you need a band? I don't know. What do you need?
So when I told the people through my blog, it's really weird because when you get bad news, you first, I obviously tell my immediate circle, and my parents help by doing that for me. But then I had to announce to, thousands of people that I've just been told I have months to live, which is quite a unique situation that not many people have to go through. So when I shared on the blog that things were not good, a lot of people came out wanting to help and wanting to start a fundraising page to alleviate some of the pressure of the months to come. And also, people were like, let me just pay for a night out or towards a holiday for you. And so I had people dropping envelopes into the hospital because they knew where I was. They didn't try and come to see me. They just dropped envelopes with money in it saying, this is for you to go and buy some clothes because we know you're struggling to find something to fit at the moment. Like, this is how close this group of people this community has come together, and I never expected that. But they were talking about starting fundraising pages, and my sisters, it's something I spoke to my family, Beck, because I didn't want to ask. My family's in a good position, but it's expensive to die at home. And
people don't think about that. It's all about the emotional trauma and everything, but I forget. You tell me about it. It costs money?
Well, lots of people are coming forward to help, but, I've got a sister that is a registered nurse. She's put her hand up to be my primary carer at the end, but she can't do it all. And having a nurse come and spend 12 hours, 24 hours a day with me, I haven't even looked at the amount of money, but it would cost thousands of dollars. Having a hospital bed, you hire these things. Serge's ability to stay, Serge works for my dad, so Serge has ultimate freedom. And my dad probably would want to just continue to pay him even though he's not working, but my family shouldn't have to do that. My dad should be able to hire someone else,
of course,
when Serge could take as much time. There's bills, there's our mortgage,
There's chew toys for Ralph. There's expenses. Ralph needs more toys. So listen, it's mycause.com.au. If you go to mycause.com.au and you search Love for Emma, or if you just Google My Cause and Love for Emma, you'll also find it. We'll definitely be making a donation. And if there are other things other than money that you need, people to walk Ralph, maybe some clothes. We've got I can go to Target and maybe just go shopping for you. I love an excuse. I'll go buy you some stuff.
Try and let's have Dale Braithwaite so people can throw his undies at him.
That's exactly right. I will buy you undies to throw at Daryl Braithwaite while you play him through your phone.
One thing, like we're planning, and this is something I'm really excited about, when we kind of know that it's time to start, the final, the buys, I am going to have a big party. Christmas is my thing. Christmas is everything to me. It's more than birthdays, and it's always been said that no matter what time of the year I die, there will be Christmas. So I plan to have, and I've got where I posted my previous fundraisers when I was fundraising for melanoma research. They're going to host the event, and I just want all my friends and family to be together for one last hurrah and all get drunk. Christmas, so it's going to be Christmas. So I'm really excited by that, and I guess this money can help me make that happen because I can't afford to give myself to give my friends and family that last. This will be that wider circles, I guess, last event with me because in my last week, so I can't say goodbye to everyone. So Christmas will be the last hurrah. So.
I'm so sorry this is happening to you. It's just really shit. It's just really shit. You don't deserve it. Serge doesn't deserve it. Your beautiful family don't deserve it. It's just an awful tragedy, and I'm just so sorry. And gosh, you're a lot of fun. You're just a huge amount of fun, and I've heard so much about you for such a long time. It's just been beautiful to meet you and to see that everything Beck said about you is just so true. I know that you're a very special person to her and that you have been, and I know that she's always been thinking about you and really treasured your friendship as well.
Thank you for doing this, and I know it will make a big difference asking for help through this channel.
Yeah. We're there for you. We are. We're there for you, and I think you'll be inundated with support.
Thank you.
Whew. Thanks for listening to No Filter. What an extraordinary woman. What a kick-ass woman. Please go to mycause.com.au, the Love for Emma page, or you can just Google My Cause Love for Emma or My Cause Emma Betts, and you'll get to the fundraising page. If you can just donate a couple of bucks, it would make a difference. As you heard, she wants to have Christmas. She wants to have a final farewell with her family and friends. Tinsel's expensive. Hopefully they need to hire a Santa suit. There's food. Got to have alcohol. And the idea of her and Serge having some nights out, just the thought of someone being able to afford those little luxuries, sending Ralph to the dog groomer, buying him some squeaky toys, all of those things. And of course, the palliative care itself, which is really expensive. And as you heard, Emma doesn't want to die in a hospice. She wants to be able to die at home, and that actually takes money. As brutal and as harsh as that sounds, it actually does. If you want to hear more from Emma, you really should head to her blog, dearmelanoma.com. And while you're there, take a look at the beautiful care packages she makes for other patients who have cancer called Love Emma. She's done an extraordinary job. She's raised herself over $100,000 for people fighting melanoma. Oh, I said fighting. People who have melanoma and who are facing all the realities involved with that. So she's done so much to give back in this short time that she's had between her diagnosis and now. And that's why it's just so important to make her final months, if we possibly can, that little bit more comfortable. To find out more about melanoma in Australia, head to melanoma.org.au. Thank you to Rebecca Sparrow for introducing me to Emma and for making this interview possible and for being an incredible friend and supporting Emma, not just during this podcast, but for the last few years. You can buy any of Beck Sparrow's books from iBooks at apple.co/mamamia. And this is also where you can subscribe to all our other shows in one place. You know that you can also download the Mamma Mia podcast app, which is your one-stop shop. If you're interested in some of the issues that this podcast has brought up, I know Emma spoke about dying with dignity and the euthanasia movement. I interviewed Andrew Denton a little while ago on this podcast, and if you scroll back in the feed, you can see that interview with him. I think that talking to Emma really makes that so real and so, I don't know, tangible, this idea of what dying with dignity means. Like, she was very graphic in some ways, that she wants to be able to die at home. She wants to be able to have that final control of when and how she goes. Today's show was produced so beautifully by Eliza Ratliff for the Mamma Mia Women's Network. The executive producer of our podcast is Monique Bowley, and the head of entertainment is Holly Wainwright. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll see you soon.